So again, thank you for this opportunity. I'm glad that everybody came out. I appreciate Todd's comments about welcoming us and also as well as thinking about Black History Month. So I'm grateful for the opportunity just to spend some time with you. When I was thinking about, a few weeks ago when Brock reached out and asked me about doing the lesson, I was like, all right, cool. I'm willing to help out, in different ways that I can. And then after that, I started to think a minute. I'm like, okay, what am I actually going to talk about? I could do, like the typical stuff, for Black History Month. There's that. I also think it's important to acknowledge and celebrate the many contributions of Black Americans to our country. It's an integral part of the overall history of America. Thought about that, and then I thought about, there's a lot of stuff going on if you haven't watched the news lately, and I hope all of you are at least aware of different things that are happening literally as we speak right now. And then I was like, well, all right, should I, kind of like just stay away from it and kind of ignore it just to be on the safe side because, not hurt anybody's feelings and, just kind of keep it cool and do something like that. And I was like, well, there's like a bigger opportunity here, in a bigger moment. And Deirdre knows this, when those situations come, I tend to roll the dice and kind of like, let's take a shot at this thing here. So that's kind of where I am with this. And so to kind of set this up, when I'm thinking about this, everybody can see this, hopefully. Yeah, got that. So a quick little Venn diagram, because then this is like the journey that I was on as I was preparing for this. Because you got your culture, your context, and lived experience. All of us have this, right? And this typically informs your identity and how you show up, how you see the world, stuff like that. And then if you juxtapose that, you have people who are different from you. Sooner or later in life, you're gonna run into somebody who's different from you if you haven't known that already, all right? You got that going on. And then you got this whole Christian thing, right? Supposed to be a disciple, you're supposed to do this thing right, you're supposed to follow Jesus, read the Bible, pray, do all those different things, right? And then you got what's happening in the world, and that's a very broad statement, all of that, And so you can even start to see it. I could put even a bunch of other circles up here, but this starts to suggest that this thing isn't straightforward. There's different levels of complexity and complications and just feelings and sensitivities, all those different things around that. And that was the thing I was wrestling with. And so with it, I'm like, I'm gonna take a shot at this thing, And so for the title of my lesson is Balancing Act. Having impact during complicated and complex times. And to set up our time here, here's what I wanted to do, is start off with these two quick scriptures. This first one is Matthew 5, okay, it's reading. And this is a soundbite from Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. And it reads, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It can no longer be good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." So that's Matthew 5. And then this next one here, a little bit of a longer passage, but this is out of John 17. And when I think about this passage here, I see this as Jesus' like vision board prayer, for all of his followers as well as all believers. And it reads, "I have revealed to you those whom you've given me out of the world. They were yours. You gave them to me, and they have obeyed your word. Now they know that everything you have given me comes from you. For I have given them the words you gave me, and they accepted them. They knew with certainty that I came from you, and they believe that you sent me. I pray for them, and I'm not praying for the world, but for those you have given me, for they are yours. All I have is yours, and all you have is mine, and glory has come to me through them. I will remain in the world no longer, but they are still in the world, and I am coming to you. Holy Father, protect them by the power of your name, the name you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one. While I was with them, I protected them and kept them safe by that name you gave me. None has been lost except the one doomed to destruction, so that the scripture would be fulfilled." I am coming to you now, but I say these things while I am still in the world, so that they may have the full measure of joy within them. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, for they are not of the world any more than I am of the world. My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. They are not of the world, even as I am not of it. Sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. For them I sanctify myself, that they too may be truly sanctified. And the last part here. My prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one, I in them and you in me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Then the world will know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. And so when I think about these two passages, two questions come to mind. This first one is, how do you be in the world but not of the world, right? And the next one is, how do you be both salt and light when times are so complicated? It's not, straightforward, this or that, one way or the other. How can you still be salt and light and still have impact in these different times here? So that's what comes to mind. Now, before I continue, I wanted to just do a quick disclaimer, all right? This is not going to be your typical Sunday lesson, all right? I'm just going to let y'all know that right now, all right? It's on a different little journey, all right? Normally when I do public speaking and stuff like that, I just start and I let people experience whatever they're going to experience along the way, but I want to just slow down for a minute and do a quick timeout and just let you know what's going on, all right? So the first piece right here, we're going to do some splaining, which is part one, all right? And I'll explain what splaining is in a minute, all right? Then we're going to learn from Jesus, so don't worry, we'll learn from Jesus, all right? I got more scriptures coming, all right? And then we'll land the plane at the end, all right? All right, so that's the journey that we're on, all right? Okay, so now, quick question for you as we step into this. Who knows who that is, all right? Okay, yeah, people know. We get some. Yes, I got some who I'm reading faces right now. So I got some who know immediately who this person is. Others, there's like a question mark that popped up, and that's okay. It's all good, all right? Now I'm going to try this little thing here to see if this works. I'm going to do this real quick. This is another little hint about who this person is. And let's see. This is a little hint. You heard that? Now, don't worry. This is the instrumental version, all right? So the verses aren't coming. This lesson ain't going to be that different, all right? All right? Yeah. So, Kendrick Lamar, that's who this person is, all right? And so for those of you who didn't know who he was visually, that's who he is, Amazing music artist, all right? He's won 22 Grammys. One of his prior albums won a Pulitzer Prize, if you didn't know. Yeah. Yeah, and this song right here, which is They Not Like Us, is it? This song itself won 5 Grammys, a month ago? When the Grammys just happened, all right? So this song is hot, all right? Yeah. Now there's like a surfacey piece to this, he's in like a little discussion, I'll just put it that way, with another artist, all right? But there's a number of other levels that are happening to this, all right? Now, one thing with Kendrick, this is how he identifies himself. He's a storyteller. He goes and finds different stories and he tries to bring them to light in creative and powerful ways, all right? Now, one other thing with this here too, I'm assuming everybody saw the Super Bowl, or at least watched some of it, all right? This is the halftime show, all right? Now, this was not your typical halftime performance, all right? There's a lot of different things going on, different layers and meanings that are going on. And I got one question for you. Did you get it? Did you get it? Now, irregardless of what your answer is to that question, whatever your answer is the reason why I'm doing the lesson the way I am doing it right now. And this is part of explaining too, by the way, all right? So, So from here, one thing I've noticed kind of in my life, in my career, is that I can be, and you can whip out your phones and pull up this QR code here in a second, but I've noticed that I have been like kind of like a safe space for people who aren't black. You know, people like to reach out to me and get Larry's opinion on different sensitive matters that are going on in regards to race or politics or different things going on in the world. And that's cool. You know, my personality kind of caters to that, and I'm okay with it. I can also feel the burden of that too, but I'm a talker, and so I'm like, hey, you want my opinion? I'm gonna give you my opinion. I'm gonna explain if you give me a chance, is it. And one thing I also like to do is just give people resources for additional research. So this person, Bobby Foster, he gives a very good breakdown of what's going on in that Super Bowl performance. And so if you wanted to, you know, pull out your QR code and pull it. Don't watch it now, obviously, but watch it later. But just giving resources because it breaks down a number of different things that are going, and I think is really, really powerful. All right? And so with that, so today we're going to take the idea of they not like us, and that's going to be the golden thread through our entire lesson for today, all right? And specifically around the idea of othering and what that means and how that is shown up in a number of different ways, all right? All right, so now we're going to just go back in time here. Oh, actually, before I do that, yeah, this is a thought question for you. What do you think and how do you respond when you cross paths with someone who is not like you? Think about that for a moment, all right? And now, with that, you know, I wanted to just jump into a few examples from my background. And so this is my home, Virginia. This is where I'm from, grew up there. And one thing about Virginia, you know, it's one of the original 13 colonies and all that. And so growing up in the school system there, you get a whole lot of Revolutionary War history, Civil War history, because literally a bunch of that literally happened right there. And a lot of the people that were involved with that. But as I was learning all these different things in school, I always wrestled just with the different facts and events that happened. And with that, you know, this idea comes to mind that a single moment can produce multiple stories and multiple experiences. And here's what I mean by that. So you got these two gentlemen right here. Does anybody recognize? Yes, no, kind of? A little bit of a history lesson, all right? History lesson. So Thomas Jefferson on the far side away from me, and then James Madison right here. Yeah, that's who that is. Like Jeopardy right now, right? Yeah. Thomas Jefferson, father of the Declaration of Independence. James Madison, the father of the Constitution, all right? So these two documents literally lay the foundation for how our country is run and how the government is set up. The ideas and the frameworks that are expressed in both of these documents are really powerful and inspirational, but that's not the only experience that you get from these documents. And so now I want to just look at this from a they not like us type of lens, all right? And so here's what I mean by that. Again, July 4th, 1776, America's birthday, very popular day. We all get the day off, or most of us do, for that. But let's look at it from a they not like us mindset for a moment, all right? So this date is a very significant day, all right? The beginning of the country, us declaring independence from Great Britain, all those powerful things that we celebrate and think about. It's a very significant day. It's a very significant day if you are white, if you are a man, if you're either a landowner, a property owner, or a business owner, all right? July 4th, 1776 is just another day if you were not white, if you were a woman, or if you were poor. July 4th doesn't look any different than July 3rd, July 11th, July 20th. That's my birthday, by the way, July 20th. But, you know, all those days, put that in there, right? All those days just kind of run together because it doesn't necessarily mean anything different from you with what this is going on. So again, multiple stories from a single moment. And this picture here just represents, I call this just voluntary immigration into America over the years, all right? And just different places from around the world that this comes from, that people came from. And then this one here is at a high level, the Middle Passage. And what the Middle Passage is just, it just diagrams how slaves came to America, is it. And just the macro level circular system of how free labor, what I'll call it quote unquote involuntary immigration happened from that point of view, which was the backbone of how America got started. So very significant day, or just another day. Next one here, we got the Constitution. Written but depending on how you think about it, it was either written or established in 1787 or 1789, depending on how the technicalities work. Powerful document, or just another document. And here's what I mean by that. They're not like us looking at it through that lens. You got women's suffrage. So that means the women's right to vote. That happened roughly 131 years later than when the Constitution was originally written. This is in 1920. This is the 19th Amendment. And then you also have black suffrage, or getting the black male vote, which is that. And that happened roughly 81 years after the Constitution was written. So this one right here, the 15th Amendment, which is what I'm talking about, it gave voting rights for all men. And then for black men exercising the right to vote, that's a whole nother conversation. Because yeah, you got the right to vote, but can you actually do it in the 1870s? That's a whole nother conversation for another day. But that's another piece of it. Next piece here with this is the 13th and the 14th Amendments. 13th Amendment got rid of slavery, abolished slavery, but at the same time it also set up the mass incarceration system that we still exist in today, with how the different policies and laws are set up around it. And then you got the 14th Amendment, which is this one here. This is citizenship, all right? It gave birthright citizenship to former slaves. And that was literally what it was designed for. And that is a hot topic literally right now. There's a chance that could be up for grabs right now as we think about that, all right? So that's that piece. And now the next one here is Ben Franklin, the American business model of capitalism. Free markets, supply and demand, you got individuals and businesses, you can own your property and control your production, do your thing. It's an amazing framework and system, and you can get very, very rich, off of that and become very, very wealthy. But there's another angle to this if you look at it through the "they not like us" lens. There have been many, policies and laws and systems that are designed to distribute wealth and opportunity to some and not others. And that's just at a high level, and this creates, as the picture shows, an uneven playing field, and that can actually influence your mindset and just how you think about things and how you approach things. As a quick example, Deirdre and I, we were entertaining the idea of, getting an investment property, which is really cool, do that. And as we were in the early parts of the journey with just figuring that out, one thing I was thinking about, and we talked about this too, is like, I don't know, I was thinking through who are some of my friends who are white, particularly male, and have them represent us pretty much in a way that, like, it looks like they're the one buying the house. We're the puppet masters in the background. We'll make sure you get paid for your time and all that type of stuff. But I wanted to have that person be up front, and that way it's a proactive way to, mitigate any discriminatory things, any sly things that may happen, just because somebody who looks like me is trying to buy a house or trying to do something like that. So that's just how your mind can go. The other quick thing here too is we're actually entertaining the idea of kind of starting this new little small business idea, which is cool, it's exciting, all that. But early on in the conversation, we were talking about this again, was it's a business, which is cool, but the idea of how much should I amplify it being a black-owned business? And originally I'm like, oh no, I don't want anybody to know that this is a black-owned business because I don't want that type of smoke, basically. I don't want that type of microaggressive things, or the interest rate is a little bit higher because of what I look like, or all those little things that can just come because it's black-owned. I just want to be the guy on the side as a regular-looking customer. Nobody needs to know that we own the thing. I show up, do my thing, and leave. That's just the mentality of it. And that's what that represents here with that picture. Next, we got the idea of meritocracy, blind justice, equal opportunity, things like that, pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. And that's based on, moving up the ladder of success based on your talent, your intelligence, or just good old-fashioned hard work, all those things there. And that's a powerful idea. It's a good idea. I agree with it. And it emphasizes individual accountability, which is a good thing. But you see the pattern, there's another side to this thing, right? Plessy versus Ferguson. This is 1896, and this is the official introduction of Jim Crow, which is the formal system of segregation. The more modern day-ish version is apartheid in South Africa. That's like a more recent version of that, but that's what America looked like 125, 130 so years ago, because this happened in 1896. And then the next example is redlining. So this is a policy system in the real estate industry that's designed to segregate and distribute wealth away from blacks and Hispanics. And these are all, I'm being literally factual right now, just with these different things. These are established facts that can weigh on you in a number of different ways. Next thing I wanted to do here is now play a quick soundbite from Martin Luther King as well as John F. Kennedy when it comes to this domain of meritocracy.
Every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are black?
White America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma. America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps. But it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
Now this is JFK.
I'm not satisfied until every American enjoys his full constitutional rights. If a Negro baby is born, and this is true also of Puerto Ricans and Mexicans in some of our cities, he has about 1/2 as much chance to get through high school as a white baby. He has 1/3 as much chance to get through college as a white student. He has about 1/3 as much chance to be a professional man, about 1/2 as much chance to own a house. He has about 4 times as much chance that he'll be out of work in his life as the white baby. I think we can do better. I don't want the talents of any American to go to waste.
All right, so just from looking at some of your faces here, so I put this slide here. It's a quick timeout. You're like, all right, Larry, slow down here, brother. You know, like, what's going on here? It's getting a little too sensitive, a little too hot. I get it. That's why I put the disclaimer slide like early on. You know, I told you this is gonna be a little bit different. This is gonna be a little bit different, okay? Now, why am I bringing all this stuff up on a Sunday morning? You know, we got our normal flow when it comes to, you know, events and things like this. You know, this is how I explain things. You know, if you ask, you're going to get it when it comes to that. And so why am I doing this? I wanted to pull up James Baldwin for a minute. He's a famous American author and civil rights activist. And he has a quote that I think really captures the essence of this. And it reads, "I love America more than any other country in the world. And exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually and really elevate the entire story of different things like that." All right, so you made it through part one. Good job. Good job, all right? So now this second piece is learning from Jesus. So this is probably going to feel a little bit more familiar, all right? Got some scriptures coming, so don't worry. We got you. We got you, all right? Let's look at Jesus here and with they not like us, all right? So for starters, the whole idea of they not like us has been around long before America even existed. Like as an example, Moses, Pharaoh, let my people go. That is a big old they not like us situation that got very extreme. It got very extreme on a number of different levels. All right, so now we're going to zero in on Jesus. And this is a conversation that he has in Luke chapter 10. And it reads, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law? How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, and so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and he saw the man. He passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came to where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him into an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. So which one of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. And so a quick thought question, something to reflect on. What do we learn from this conversation about Jesus and who he is and his character? And how can this inform and influence how we show up in our everyday lives? Another passage for you. This is John chapter 8. And this is a conversation that Jesus is having with a woman who's in trouble right now. At dawn, he appeared again in the temple courts, where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commands us to stone such women. Now, what do you say? They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus went down and started to write on the ground with his finger. I've actually always wondered what Jesus was writing. Part of me thinking he was writing, they not like us. Who knows? Who knows? We'll never know, right? This continues. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. Again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? No one, sir, she said. Then neither do I condemn you, Jesus declared. Go now and leave your life of sin. Again, the same questions here. What do we learn from this conversation about Jesus, and how can this inform and influence how we show up? One last passage here. This is another soundbite. Jesus' Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5. And it says, You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that they may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Again, the same question. What do we learn from this soundbite from Jesus? And how can this inform and influence how we show up in our everyday lives? And now the last part here. We're going to land the plane. All right? A few more scriptures coming with that. And that's, again, the journey that we have been going on. All right, a couple more scriptures here. This is Romans 12. This is Paul talking. And one thing with Paul, the way I see it, his primary objective when he was writing the book of Romans was to deal with the they not like us dynamics that were happening between the Jewish Christians and the Gentile Christians. There was a whole lot of they not like us going on, to the point where he needed to write a few books about that to help deal with that. And then, and here's how it reads. This is Romans 12. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. This next one is 1 Peter chapter 3. And with Peter, with the books of 1 and 2 Peter, his primary objective was to encourage, and strengthen the faith of the early Christians, because they were experiencing a whole lot of they not like us going on in their day in the form of persecution to the extreme levels. And this reads, but even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. Do not fear their threats and do not be frightened, but in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience so that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ may be ashamed of their slander. There's a quick quote here from a famous playwright. His name is Terence, from a long, long time ago. And this quote reads, I am human, and I think nothing human is alien to me. Some of you may or may not have heard of this quote, but what does that mean? It's very abstract, or can feel that way. It means this: we are not beyond the different variations of the human experience that are out there. Now, what does that mean, Larry? So break it down even more. So think about for a moment the people in your life, or who are around you, or who you may cross paths with, that you secretly judge in your mind and your heart, based on their life situation or their life choices. All of us do it. I do it. All of us do it. Like, oh, I would never do that. Or that person made that choice and now they're in that situation. Like, I'm talking about those types of people, all right? You don't have to raise your hands. I don't need to know. But think about those people, right? Now, no matter how good or bad or ugly it is, you are not beyond the thing you're judging them on. All right? That's the big idea. And that's what he's talking about with this. Nothing that is human is alien to me. And hopefully that prompts a level of just empathy and compassion towards other people. Now, here's a quick example of one thing that I just started here at work. This is a little, there we go. Let the music run a little bit. So this is a podcast series that I literally am starting up very, very soon. And the big idea of 100 Level is to simply be at the intersection of different lived experiences, to find the common threads of shared humanity so that you can learn from each other and grow. And with that, pull out your phones again. So this is like my little introductory episode, which is on this QR code that talks about that. This is a cool conversation that I had with the former U.S. ambassador to South Africa about the African indigenous philosophy of Ubuntu. And that really gets into this a whole lot. And so, and so this podcast and this whole idea, when I reflected on it as I was working on it and getting all the things prepared for it, it came out of something that I did a long, long time ago that I didn't realize the power of it until roughly 40-ish later now. Yeah. So I'm grateful that we got getting some views there, which is good. All right, so this goes back to something a long, long time ago. All right, who knows who this is? Yeah, I see a lot of question marks popping up. So this is Robert E. Lee, Confederate general. Now, he's a big deal in the South. He may not be a big deal out west, but he's a huge deal in the South. And I got to pause here for a quick moment. Who think that you sitting in Sunday church looking at a picture of Robert E. Lee? Hey, that's something else, right? A different service today, all right? Now, with him, and you may recall this might bring up a little bit more memories. There was a big riot that happened back in 2017 over his statue. This happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. Actually, they talked about it in some of the presidential debates. It still pops up from time to time. Charlottesville's my hometown, by the way, and I know exactly where that statue is. I used to walk by it all the time. The statue was huge. It was bigger than day when I used to walk by it. And so the thing that I would wrestle with when it comes, again, with American history and just learning it is when I was back in middle school, like you learn the facts and all that type of stuff, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Like why even fight the Civil War? Like, doesn't the South or the Confederacy know that slavery's bad? You shouldn't do that. Let slaves go and make it all even. Like why does that? Like, it didn't really jibe or connect. Like, why go to war for 4 years? And if I recall correctly, I think the Civil War is still the one battle that the one war America has been in with the most casualties ever. Because you have to count casualties and loss of life on both sides. And so for that level of damage and loss of life and all of that, like, why even do that? Like, doesn't the South just get it? And so the way I tried to answer that question is I decided to study the Civil War from the Confederate point of view, to really just try to understand where they're coming from with that. Now, as I say that, again, a black man studying the Civil War from the Confederate point of view, another non-typical service element that is here. And in my journey with that, what I was trying to do is to really just step into that worldview, to really just understand what's going on, right? And with that, as I step into the worldview, there are some fundamental things about that world that I do not agree with, for sure, starting with slaves are not humans. They're property, all of that. And you take that with the business model of the Confederacy. If you have free labor and you're producing services and goods that are in high demand, your profit goes through the roof, and you could generate a bunch of generational wealth, power, influence, a whole bunch of things come along with that. And so from a pure economic, non-moral point of view, that's a pretty good business model if you think about it. But we can't stop just right there and really think about the humanity that's involved. And so if you have that worldview and you're living in that, and then you have some external force saying that, hey, that ain't right. I'm going to disrupt your life. I'm going to take your wealth, take your business model, which is going to threaten my generational wealth, all of that. Then I'm like, okay, that does well up a desire to defend yourself, to the extreme levels to where war happens, right? And so that was one of my big conclusions back then. I'm like, okay, wow, I don't agree with the worldview, but I get it. All right? And so way back when, I think this is middle school when I studied this, I came to that big conclusion. I didn't really know what to do with it. I'm like, oh, well, all right, next topic. Let's go play some basketball now, do something else, move along with it. But little did I know that was like a seed that's starting to come to bear fruit, 30-ish, 40 years later, when you have situations like George Floyd coming up, things like that. Or if I'm sitting across from somebody at work or something like that, and they just have a different point of view, and I just do not agree with, yes, I'm tall, I'm 6'8", yes, I can play basketball, but that's not the only thing I can do. Like, all those little things that just come your way, be able to sit in those moments, navigate the tension, the awkwardness that can come up, and just stay present and just try to just be curious, just for a quick moment, just to see where they're coming from. If there's different threads of humanity there, like, okay, be generous with that and explore that. Still be myself, and you don't have to agree, with the opposite point of view or the different lifestyle that is there, but at least be human with it and just stay curious for a quick moment. And that's the thing that I learned, from way back when, from him back in the 1980s. And I'm like, wow, that makes sense. It makes sense in being able to do that. And so the last couple scriptures here, Matthew 25, and it reads, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." And then 2 Peter finally, chapter 1. And this is like a practical way to develop your faith for impact. That's how I think about this passage. His divine power has given us everything we need for a godly life through our knowledge of him who called us by his own glory and goodness. Through these, he has given us his very great and precious promises, so that through them you may participate in the divine nature, having escaped the corruption of the world caused by evil desires. For this very reason, make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and to goodness knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control perseverance, and to perseverance godliness, and to godliness mutual affection, and to mutual affection love. For if you possess these qualities in increasing measure, they will keep you from being ineffective and unproductive in your knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. But whoever does not have them is nearsighted and blind, forgetting that they have been cleansed from their past sins. Therefore, brothers and sisters, make every effort to confirm your calling and election. For if you do these things, you will never stumble, and you will receive a rich welcome into the eternal kingdom of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And so to wrap it up and to kind of bring it all around, it's a complicated and complex world that we live in. But you got this, you got this. It's tough, but you got it. You can do it. Learn from Jesus, as well as the other moments in the Bible where they not like us, happen. Learn how it can inform and influence how you show up and how you make decisions. And then never forget to just add a little bit of this, a little bit of mustard. And this is funny. There's a generational moment happening. Some of you get this and some of you don't. So Mustard, this is DJ Mustard, Kendrick Lamar's DJ he works with. He wrote a bunch of his songs. He's a really cool thing. And so if you hear people yelling mustard, it's a thing. It's a funny thing. But a mustard seed of faith is where we're going. And again, I want to leave you with this. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world.